In a small, quiet town nestled among the woods, a series of mysterious incidents began to unfold. Residents whispered of strange sightings and unexplained disappearances, but most dismissed these tales as mere folklore. However, what happened one fateful night shook the town to its core, leaving a lingering fear that would haunt them for years to come. Amelia, a young woman living on the outskirts of town, was accustomed to the tranquility of her surroundings. But that night, an unsettling feeling crept over her as she prepared to sleep. The moon loomed large and foreboding in the sky, casting an eerie glow through her bedroom window. As she drifted into an uneasy slumber, a low, guttural growl roused her from her sleep. Her heart raced with fear as she realized the sound was coming from inside her home. She dismissed it at first, attributing it to the wind or an animal, until she heard the creaking of floorboards just outside her bedroom door. Paralyzed by terror, Amelia lay still, her breaths shallow, as the door slowly swung open. A looming figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight. A monstrous creature, with gleaming eyes and bared fangs. It was a werewolf, its primal instincts driving it into Amelia's home. The creature's snarls reverberated through the room as it prowled closer, its presence suffocating Amelia with dread. She wanted to scream, to flee, but fear had rendered her immobile. The werewolf's gaze locked onto hers, a haunting moment of connection between predator and prey. Amelia's pulse thundered in her ears as the werewolf lunged forward, its claws slashing through the air. With a surge of adrenaline, she leapt from her bed and bolted towards the window, shattering the glass to escape into the night. Heart pounding and gasping for breath, Amelia raced through the woods, the werewolf's menacing howls echoing behind her. She didn't dare look back, driven by sheer survival instinct, until she reached the safety of a neighbor's house. The authorities scoured the area, but found no trace of the creature. The town was engulfed in fear and suspicion, haunted by the horrifying reality that a werewolf prowled among them. Amelia's tale became a chilling legend, a cautionary reminder that in the dead of night, the line between myth and reality could blur into unspeakable terror. Amidst this backdrop, Jack, a diligent night watchman at a local warehouse, was entrusted with overseeing the security cameras. His night began like any other, the monitors casting an eerie glow in the dimly lit room. But as the clock struck midnight, the air thickened with an unspoken unease. On the screen, Jack noticed an abnormal movement in the warehouse's perimeter cameras, an eerie rustling in the shadows. As he focused closer, his breath caught in his throat. A figure emerged, its silhouette unmistakably lupine, its gait uncannily predatory. The figure, now unmistakably a werewolf, prowled stealthily, moving with an unnatural grace that made Jack's blood run cold. Then, a horrifying realization struck as the werewolf closed in on a lone co-worker, Adam, who was finishing late work. With trembling hands, Jack desperately reached for the intercom, frantically attempting to alert Adam. But his cries went unheard, drowned out by the whir of machinery and the relentless march of the night. The werewolf lunged at Adam, its savage claws tearing through his flesh. Adam's frantic screams echoed through the warehouse as he struggled to fend off the ferocious beast. Jack watched in horror as the attack unfolded on the monitors, an agonizing spectacle that felt like an eternity. Despite Adam's valiant efforts, the werewolf's relentless assault overpowered him. With a haunting howl, the creature vanished into the depths of the warehouse, leaving behind a trail of destruction and Adam's lifeless body. The footage was a nightmarish reel etched into Jack's memory. The town was plunged into a state of dread and disbelief. The encounter with the werewolf shattered the once peaceful illusion of their town, leaving an indelible mark of terror. Jack grappled with the haunting truth, the existence of a creature that defied reason and shattered the boundaries between myth and reality. The legend of the werewolf became a grim reminder that in the darkest hours of the night, unseen horrors could manifest, lurking in the shadows and preying upon the unsuspecting. In the small town of Millwood, Emily, a young woman who lived on the outskirts of Millwood, had heard the whispers but brushed them off as old wives' tales. As she settled in for the night, an eerie sensation crept over her as the moon loomed large in the sky, casting an ominous glow through her bedroom window. Unbeknownst to Emily, a strange figure lurked in the shadows outside her home. The air grew thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant howling of wolves. As Emily stepped into the shower, enveloped by the comforting sound of water, a sense of unease gnawed at her. Suddenly the room fell silent, and a cold chill prickled at her skin. She caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye, a shadow looming outside the frosted bathroom window. Panic surged through her as she heard a low, guttural growl, chilling her to the bone. Frozen with fear, Emily watched in horror as the bathroom door slowly creaked open, revealing the silhouette of a grotesque figure. With trembling hands, she reached for the shower curtain, but before she could react, a massive clawed hand slowly peeled the fabric back, revealing the ghastly visage of a werewolf. Its eyes gleamed with a primal hunger, its breath hot and heavy with anticipation. Emily's heart pounded in terror as the creature lunged at her. Its fangs bared and claws slashing through the air, she screamed in horror, desperately trying to fend off the savage beast. In a whirlwind of chaos and fear, Emily fought for her life, her pleas for help drowned by the creature's ferocious growls. With a surge of adrenaline, she managed to break free, sprinting from the bathroom, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. The werewolf, fueled by its insatiable hunger, pursued her through the house, tearing through rooms with inhuman strength. Emily's terrified cries echoed through the night as she fled for her life, the creature's haunting howls trailing behind her. In the aftermath, the town was left reeling from the terrifying ordeal. Emily survived the harrowing encounter, but the memory of the savage beast that had invaded her home haunted her every moment, a stark reminder that in the darkest corners of the world, ancient legends could manifest into horrifying realities. In the sprawling expanse of Greenwood City, a wave of gruesome homicides had left its inhabitants gripped by fear. 3 seasoned detectives, Caroline, Marcus, and Alex, were determined to put an end to the reign of terror haunting their community. They tirelessly pursued leads, each murder linking back to one elusive suspect. Their pursuit led them to a secluded, dilapidated house on the edge of town, a sinister dwelling cloaked in shadows and steeped in an eerie silence. On this fateful night, armed with conviction and adrenaline, they stormed the suspect's hideout, determined to bring justice to the victims and closure to the city's dread. Inside the decrepit house, the detectives navigated through the labyrinthine corridors, their flashlights piercing the oppressive darkness. The air hung heavy with the stench of decay, and the silence was suffocating, broken only by the echo of their own footsteps. Finally, in a dimly lit room, they found their suspect, a man whose countenance held an unnerving calmness. His chilling gaze locked with theirs, an unsettling confidence radiating from his every pore. As the detectives confronted the suspect, demanding answers and a halt to the bloodshed, an inexplicable transformation began to unfold. At first, it was subtle, a twitch, a contortion of his features. as through an unseen force gripped his very essence. A collective sense of unease pervaded the room as the suspect's transformation accelerated. Bones shifted and cracked beneath his skin, muscles convulsed, and a primal agony contorted his visage. The room echoed with the haunting symphony of a metamorphosis. In a terrifying spectacle, the man underwent a grotesque change, his form twisting and elongating. Fur sprouted from his flesh, claws replaced fingernails, and his mouth elongated into a snout filled with razor-sharp teeth. The room trembled with the beast's growls, and the detectives were gripped by a surreal horror. They were face to face with a werewolf. The creature's eyes glowed with an otherworldly ferocity, fixated on its would-be captors. Fear surged through the detectives as they grappled with the reality of this monstrous transformation, their rational minds struggling to comprehend the impossible. Carolyn, Marcus, and Alex, armed but shaken, found themselves trapped in a terrifying showdown with the supernatural. The werewolf, driven by primal instinct, lunged at them with startling speed, its claws poised for a savage attack. A harrowing battle ensued, a frenzied clash between human cunning and primal savagery. The room became a battleground, the sound of gunfire and the creature's enraged snarls echoing through the house. Despite their training and resolve, the detectives found themselves outmatched by the sheer ferocity of the werewolf. In a final, desperate act, they unleashed a barrage of gunfire, the deafening shots shattering the eerie silence. As the echoes subsided, a haunting stillness descended upon the room. The werewolf lay motionless, its haunting transformation stilled by their relentless assault. Exhausted and shaken, the detectives emerged from the house, their mission complete, but their minds haunted by the chilling reality they had witnessed. They were left grappling with a nightmarish truth, a truth that transcended the boundaries of their rational world, leaving them forever scarred by the horrific encounter with the supernatural. On a chilly, moonlit night in the small town of Ravenswood, a woman named Emma found herself walking home from her late shift at the local diner. The streets were empty, and the air was thick with an eerie silence. The glow of the full moon added a ghostly pallor to the surroundings, setting the stage for an unexpected encounter. As she walked past a row of quaint houses, her gaze was drawn to a peculiar sight. In the distance, under the dim streetlight, she saw a massive silhouette scaling the side of a house. It moved with an unnatural grace, the moonlight reflecting off its fur. Frozen in fear, Emma squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. She felt a chill creep down her spine as she realized that the creature was a werewolf, its monstrous form both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The sight was beyond the realm of rational explanation. Emma's heart raced as she grappled with the urge to flee or investigate further. Fear battled her curiosity, but an unexplainable force kept her rooted to the spot, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before her. The werewolf reached the rooftop and perched there, its silhouette outlined against the moonlit sky. It let out a bone-chilling howl that sent shivers down Emma's spine. Her pulse quickened, and her breaths came in shallow gasps. Then, as if sensing her presence, the creature turned its head toward her, its eyes glowing like fiery orbs. Emma's blood ran cold as she locked eyes with the beast. The werewolf let out another haunting howl, and Emma knew she had to escape. Summoning her courage, she turned and sprinted down the desolate street. Panic overtook her, and she dared not glance back. Her footsteps echoed in the night, racing to escape the clutches of the monstrous entity. She finally reached her home, breathless and trembling. Locking the door behind her, she peered out the window, half expecting to see the werewolf stalking her. But the creature had vanished, leaving behind only the unsettling memory of its presence. That night, Emma could hardly sleep, haunted by the knowledge that something supernatural roamed the quiet streets of Ravenswood. The image of the werewolf's glowing eyes would forever be etched into her mind, a terrifying reminder that the supernatural could lurk just beyond the shadows, waiting to reveal itself in the darkness. In a small, isolated town nestled deep within the woods, a couple, Mark and Sarah, sought a peaceful retreat from their bustling city lives. They rented a quaint cabin, surrounded by towering trees and a deafening silence that seemed to swallow every sound. Little did they know, their peaceful escape would soon turn into a nightmarish ordeal. On a moonlit night, as the couple sat by the fireplace, the shadows danced ominously around the room. The crackling fire was the only solace in the eerie stillness. Suddenly, a bone-chilling howl pierced the night, sending shivers down their spines. They dismissed it as a distant wolf and tried to resume their evening, attempting to ignore the growing unease that settled in the air. As the clock struck midnight, Mark went outside to fetch more firewood. Sarah, feeling a sense of foreboding, watched him from the window, anxiously awaiting his return. Minutes turned into an agonizing eternity, and she decided to step outside to check on him. In the moonlight, she saw Mark standing by the trees, seemingly talking to someone. As she approached, she noticed a figure cloaked in a long, tattered trench coat. Alarmed, she called out to Mark, but he didn't respond. The figure turned to face her, revealing gleaming yellow eyes that froze her blood. Terrified, she sprinted back into the cabin, locking the door behind her. Mark burst in, his face ashen, recounting how the trench-coated figure had approached him, emanating a vile stench of decay. They heard scratching and tapping at the windows, and dread consumed them as they realized they were being stalked. The power went out, plunging them into darkness. The only source of light was the flickering fire. Panicked, they searched for any means of protection. As they huddled in fear, the scratching and tapping continued, now accompanied by guttural growls. The creature outside started to reveal its true form, a monstrous werewolf, its disheveled fur matted with blood, and its twisted, elongated limbs battered the windows. The trenchcoat hung from its monstrous frame, concealing its true identity until now. They desperately tried to barricade themselves, but the creature's strength was overpowering. With a sickening crash, it shattered the window and lunged into the room. In the dim firelight, they fought valiantly, but the werewolf's feral strength was too much. As the creature closed in for the kill, a sudden beam of headlights pierced through the darkness. The werewolf, momentarily distracted, howled in agony as the headlights revealed its true nature. A shot rang out, and the creature slumped to the floor, lifeless. A local hunter, hearing the commotion, had come to investigate. He explained that the town had long been plagued by this vengeful werewolf, disguised in a trench coat, to stalk its victims. The couple, shaken and scarred, knew they had survived a nightmarish encounter, a tale they would never forget, etched in the fabric of their deepest fears. In a desolate hamlet, tucked away amidst towering trees and engulfed in perpetual darkness, there lived an old farmer named Jeremiah. The village had long been plagued by a relentless fear, an ancient curse whispered to be the work of a vengeful spirit, Or perhaps something far more sinister. One bone-chilling autumn night, as the moon cast an eerie glow over the land, Jeremiah found himself unable to sleep. An unshakable feeling of dread gripped his heart, and he could sense an unsettling presence lurking just beyond the shadows. Jeremiah glanced out his window, and there, under the ghastly moonlight, he caught a glimpse of a monstrous creature, a werewolf with fur as black as the night itself. Its yellow eyes glowed menacingly, fixated on Jeremiah's trembling figure. The farmer's pulse quickened, realizing he was the target of this horrific being. The creature began to stalk him, its movements unnaturally quiet and stealthy. Jeremiah could hear the occasional rustle of leaves, a low growl carried by the wind, a reminder that he was not alone in the stillness of the night. The relentless pursuit continued, the werewolf always just out of sight, yet Jeremiah could sense its presence growing closer. In desperation, he locked himself inside his farmhouse, trying to barricade every entrance. But the creature seemed to have an unnatural knowledge of the place, scratching at the doors and windows, its ferocious howls echoing through the night. Jeremiah's fear intensified with each passing hour, as the predator circled his home like a malevolent spirit, refusing to be denied its prey. As the night wore on, the farmer's stamina waned, and the sense of dread deepened. His farmhouse became a claustrophobic trap, and he knew he had to make a run for safety. The first light of dawn began to break, a faint glimmer of hope on the horizon. Summoning all his courage, Jeremiah bolted from the farmhouse, sprinting towards the edge of the woods where safety beckoned. He could feel the werewolf's hot breath on his neck, its guttural growls resonating in the air, a hair-raising reminder that his life was hanging by a thread. Just as the first rays of sunlight pierced the darkness, the werewolf lunged at Jeremiah. He managed to evade its clutches at the last moment, feeling the rush of wind as the creature missed him. With a final burst of strength, he escaped into the safety of the dawning day. The werewolf retreated, vanishing into the shadows, its curse for now abated by the rising sun. Jeremiah survived that horrifying night, but the memory of being hunted by the monstrous creature would forever haunt his dreams, a reminder that some terrors only come alive under the cover of darkness. In a secluded part of the countryside, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, sat the Wallace family ranch, a peaceful retreat from the bustling world. The Wallace family, consisting of the parents, David and Laura, and their 3 children, Tim, Claire, and little Ethan, had planned a 2-week family reunion at the ranch. Little did they know that their time there would turn into a nightmarish ordeal. On the first night of their gathering, a full moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape. The family gathered around a crackling fire, sharing stories and laughter. The atmosphere was joyful, the air thick with the scent of pines and the sounds of nature. As the night progressed, the family retired to their respective rooms. Unbeknownst to them, a creature lurked in the shadows, watching their every move with predatory eyes. The ranch was not as peaceful as it seemed. On the second night, the family heard strange noises outside their windows. They brushed it off as the rustling of leaves or the cries of nocturnal creatures. But as the days went by, the noises grew louder and more menacing. It wasn't until the third night that the creature revealed itself. A loud crash echoed through the ranch, awakening the family. They rushed outside to find a scene of chaos. The barn was in ruins, and the livestock had been savagely slaughtered. Fear gripped their hearts, and panic set in as they realized they were not alone. The creature, a fearsome werewolf, emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They had heard tales of the legendary beast, but they had never believed them until now. The family retreated into the house, desperately trying to secure it against the approaching threat. They reinforced windows and doors, clutching each other in terror. The werewolf circled the ranch, testing their defenses. Days turned into a relentless nightmare. The werewolf taunted them, picking them off one by one in a brutal and relentless manner. Tim was the first to fall victim, his screams echoing through the night. Then Claire and little Ethan, each life extinguished, leaving the family broken and devastated. David and Laura fought valiantly to protect each other and their family, but they knew their fate was sealed. The werewolf, relentless and cunning, stalked them with a sadistic pleasure, making them question their own sanity. On the final night, the werewolf cornered Laura. David, filled with a father's desperation, bravely attacked the creature. The struggle was fierce, but in the end, the werewolf overpowered him. David lay on the ground, bloodied and broken, as Laura watched in horror. The werewolf turned to her, its feral eyes locking onto hers. She whispered her final goodbyes, tears streaming down her face. The ranch, once a sanctuary for the Wallace family, had turned into a graveyard. The werewolf, satiated with its bloodlust, vanished into the night, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable tragedy. The Wallace family's idyllic family gathering had ended in devastation, leaving them shattered and forever haunted by the memory of the werewolf that had torn their lives apart. A group of high school students embarked on an unforgettable field trip to an isolated farm nestled deep in the countryside, far from the safety of the city lights. Little did they know that their educational adventure would soon turn into a horrifying encounter with a creature that lurked in the darkest corners of their nightmares. As they arrived at the farm on a gloomy morning, a thick mist hung in the air, obscuring their vision and lending an eerie aura to the place. The farm was vast and surrounded by dense woods, with nothing but open fields stretching as far as the eye could see. The farm owner, Mr. Devereaux, led the students through the fields, regaling them with tales of the area's local legends. The students listened intently, but they didn't realize that today they'd become a part of a terrifying story themselves. As the group ventured further into the fields, a tense silence settled over them. The atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation, and unease simmered beneath the surface. A sinister feeling washed over them, as if the very earth itself held some malevolent secret. Suddenly, a bone-chilling howl echoed through the fields, sending shivers down their spines. It was a sound unlike anything they had ever heard before, a guttural, primal cry that seemed to emanate from the very bowels of the earth. Mr. Devereaux turned pale, his voice quavering as he urged the students to stay together and head back to the safety of the farmhouse. But the howling grew closer, and a shadowy figure emerged from the distance, sprinting toward them at inhuman speed. It was a werewolf, its grotesque form a nightmarish blend of human and wolf, with razor-sharp claws and gleaming yellow eyes. Panic erupted among the students as the werewolf closed in on them. They scattered in all directions, their terrified screams merging with the creature's blood-curdling howls. The moon, nearly full, cast an eerie glow on the gruesome scene as chaos reigned in the fields. One by one, the students fell victim to the relentless werewolf. Its savage claws tore through flesh and bone, leaving behind a trail of lifeless bodies. The farmhouse remained agonizingly distant, the safety they had sought now forever out of reach. As dawn approached, the werewolf retreated into the woods, leaving the farm in silence, except for the eerie stillness of the fields, now marred by the haunting memories of that night. The legend of the farm became a sinister, cautionary tale for those who ventured into the darkness of the countryside. The high school students' terrifying encounter served as a chilling reminder that, in the most unexpected places, the horrors of the night can come to life, turning a simple field trip into a nightmarish descent into terror. In a remote and decaying mansion that stood in the midst of the gloomy forest, an old man named Arthur lived a life of solitude. His only living relative, a nephew named Samuel, had always wondered about the family's dark and hidden secrets. It was an obsession that eventually led him to the most horrifying revelation of his life. One cold and stormy night, Samuel visited his eccentric grandfather's mansion. The wind howled through the trees and the rain lashed against the windows, casting eerie shadows across the dimly lit rooms. Samuel was on a quest to uncover the truth that had eluded him for years. After a sumptuous dinner filled with awkward silences, Samuel decided to confront Arthur about the family's enigmatic past. The old man hesitated, his eyes filled with dread, but he knew it was time to reveal the sinister secret. Arthur led Samuel to the basement, an ominous place that had always remained off-limits. As they descended the creaking stairs, Samuel's heart pounded in anticipation, his imagination running wild with dark possibilities. The basement was cold and damp, with a foul, musky odor that hung heavy in the air. In the far corner of the room, Samuel saw it, a massive, grotesque creature shackled to the wall. Its fur was matted and soaked, its claws sharp and deadly. "What is that?" Samuel stammered, his voice trembling with fear. Arthur, his eyes filled with sorrow, confessed the horrifying truth. "That is a werewolf, Samuel, a cursed soul, once human, now imprisoned in this wretched form. It is the darkest secret of our family, a secret passed down through generations." The creature's eyes glowed with an unnatural, malevolent light. It let out a guttural growl, sending shivers down Samuel's spine. He couldn't believe his eyes, nor accept the chilling reality that his own grandfather had been keeping a werewolf imprisoned in their basement for decades. "Why, grandfather?" Samuel whispered, unable to comprehend the extent of the madness. The old man's gaze remained fixated on the creature, his voice heavy with guilt. "To protect the world, Samuel. This creature was once a close relative, transformed by an ancient curse. To release it would unleash unspeakable horrors upon the world." As Samuel absorbed the horrifying truth, he knew that he could not keep such a sinister secret. He also realized that his own life was in grave danger as long as the werewolf remained imprisoned in the basement. The realization was heavy, and the decision was agonizing, but he had to make a choice, to free the creature or to keep it contained. In the darkest hours of that stormy night, Samuel faced a decision that would change the course of his family's dark history. The werewolf, once imprisoned, was now free. The forest was forever changed by the creature's release, its ominous presence casting a shadow that would never lift. As Samuel looked back at the mansion, he knew that his family's sinister legacy had come full circle, leaving him with a heavy heart, a feeling of dread, and a horrifying secret that would haunt him for the rest of his days. In the quiet, isolated town of River's End, nestled along the banks of a deep, winding river, a solitary fisherman named Jack had spent countless serene evenings casting his line into the water, watching the fading sun paint the sky with hues of orange and pink. But one fateful evening, the tranquility of the river would be shattered by a horrifying encounter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack continued fishing, unaware that an ominous presence had begun to stalk him. The first sign of danger came as a feeling of unease, a gnawing suspicion that he was not alone. He glanced over his shoulder, and his blood ran cold. In the dying light, a figure lurked at the forest's edge, a colossal creature, half man and half beast, its eyes gleaming with a malevolence that sent shivers down Jack's spine. It was a werewolf, a nightmarish presence not meant for the mortal world. Paralyzed with fear, Jack realized that he was the creature's prey. As darkness enveloped the riverbank, the werewolf slowly advanced, its growls and heavy breathing filling the air. Jack fumbled for his flashlight, casting a trembling beam toward the approaching horror. The creature's grotesque form became more pronounced in the stark light, its fur matted and soaked, its jaws slathered with saliva. It was a true embodiment of terror, a predator that had no place in the world of men. Panicked, Jack reeled in his fishing line and scrambled for his boat, the creature closing in with each passing second. He shoved off from the riverbank and paddled madly, but the werewolf was relentless, swimming alongside the boat with unnatural speed. The creature's sinister eyes never left Jack, and its guttural growls echoed in the darkness, filling the fisherman with dread. Jack knew he couldn't escape the creature's relentless pursuit, and his mind raced for a solution. With a surge of inspiration, he reached into his tackle box and retrieved a flare gun. With trembling hands, he fired it into the night sky, illuminating the riverbank with a fiery explosion. The werewolf recoiled, its fur smoldering, and with a final, blood-curdling howl, it retreated into the woods, vanishing into the shadows. Jack's heart pounded as he watched the creature's menacing form disappear. He knew he had narrowly escaped a gruesome fate, and he would never venture to the river at night again. The legend of the riverbank werewolf would forever haunt his dreams, a chilling reminder that, in the depths of darkness, horrors beyond imagination can emerge. On a chilling autumn night, in a remote, fog-drenched valley, there lived an old farmer named Elias. Elias was a solitary man who had spent the majority of his life tending to his farm, surrounded by dense woods and an eerie stillness that unsettled most who wandered too close. One fateful night, a full moon bathed the valley in an otherworldly glow, and the air was thick with an unsettling tension. Elias could feel the ominous presence that had settled upon his land. He stepped outside, his creaking bones aching with every movement. As he walked through the dim moonlight, he noticed an unnatural stillness in the air. The usual sounds of crickets and rustling leaves were absent. The livestock in the barn were agitated, their restless movements betraying a fear they couldn't quite articulate. He approached the barn, heart pounding as he swung the creaking doors open. The scene inside was horrifying. The once peaceful barn was now a macabre display of violence. His livestock, torn to shreds, lay lifeless on the hay-strewn floor. Blood splatters painted the walls in grotesque patterns. A gut-wrenching growl echoed through the night. The air became thick with the metallic scent of blood. Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine, and he realized he was not alone. The ferocious werewolf, its fur matted with fresh blood, emerged from the shadows. The creature's eyes, glowing with an unholy light, locked onto Elias. It had a grotesque mixture of human and wolf features, a horrifying blend of monstrosity. Its snarls and growls sent chills down Elias's spine. Paralyzed with fear, Elias stumbled backward, desperate to escape. But the werewolf was swift and agile, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Elias could feel its hot breath on his neck, the stench of death filling his nostrils. He knew he was facing an unstoppable force. In a last, desperate attempt to survive, Elias managed to grab a pitchfork from the barn wall. He swung it wildly at the creature, striking it in the side. The werewolf howled in pain, giving Elias a fleeting moment to break free. He bolted out of the barn, heart racing, and sprinted towards his farmhouse. The werewolf pursued, its ferocious snarls echoing through the valley. Elias barricaded himself inside, his trembling hands fumbling to secure the doors and windows. He prayed for morning, knowing that only daylight could offer him some respite. As dawn approached, the werewolf's growls grew distant, and the sun began to rise. Elias stepped cautiously outside, his farm now a gruesome testament to the night's terror. He had survived, but the memory of that ferocious werewolf would haunt him forever, a reminder of the horrors that could lurk in the shadows of even the most tranquil places.